Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrael Hawkins. Well, we have, again, earthquakes in seeming place after place. Marijuana kosher for Passover? And, of course, the heat is on in Paris with the climate deal that was just signed. The latest earthquake in Ecuador has risen and 780 people are dead, but over 1,700 are still missing while families search, wait, and pray for miracles. Rescue workers from Peru assisted in the rescue efforts at a collapsed hotel where 30 people were staying. So far, 12 people have been rescued. Even a 9-year-old girl was worried about her mother, who narrowly escaped death from falling debris.
The earthquake devastated the coast of Ecuador. Rescue teams have been flown in from all over the world to help. Now, 3 people were rescued from a collapsed supermarket, while reports of 20 other people trapped inside were surfacing. Now, as onlookers observed, rescue workers removed a body from the debris.
Sad. Well, Houston, the nation's 4th largest city in the United States, is in a state of emergency as 6 people have died in historic flooding. More than 1,000 homes are flooded as waters are still rising. Scientists are calling this a 1 in 500-year flood. Emergency crews have made more than 2,000 water rescues in the last 36 hours, they say, including 45 residents of a nursing home. Everyone from adults, children, and even pets were rescued as, get this, 240 billion gallons of water fell in just 24 hours.
Well, almost 100 horses from one stable nearly drowned, and even cattle had to be corralled by airboats. Now, nearly all of those victims who died were from the result of the flooding were because they drove into the flooding waters, and of course the vehicle becomes submerged or swept away, and the result is death.
And I know that the authorities and the news media usually puts out warnings cautioning people not to drive into the water during flash flood conditions, but sometimes people do, and they reap the rewards as a result. Well, more rain is expected as the death toll rises. The Harris County Sheriff's Office is checking from house to house for anyone still stranded.
Well, in Michigan, several state and local officials have been charged with tampering with water tests that prove that the city of Flint, Michigan's water was contaminated with high concentrations of lead. Now, Michigan's Attorney General Bill Schuetz said that the recent charges are only the beginning and that he guarantees that there will be more to come.
Interesting. Well, this all began in 2014 when the city of Flint changed its water supply system in an effort to save money, no longer getting it from Lake Huron through Detroit. They began taking it from the local Flint River there. And of course, the water in the river was corrosive, which damaged the pipes and released lead into homes across the city, while authorities ignored for months cries from scientists who were actually testing the water and finding that there were high concentrations of lead.
Well, Maryland Senator Ben Cardin said, "It's sad to see that we're the wealthiest nation in the world, yet we don't have the water infrastructure needed." Now, as a result, he said, it's affecting the health of our children and American families. It is a primary function of government to provide safe drinking water for its population. And really, it's said that in an effort to save money with their different water source, they're definitely going to be spending more money to fix this problem.
That's right. And the children and the people who are drinking the water are actually paying a higher price as a result. Flint is one of America's most vulnerable cities, with 40% of its population living in poverty. Many residents are black, and some say that's why authorities have ignored the problem.
Well, the country of Venezuela is letting its citizens know about impending power cuts, putting the residents into darkness for 4 hours each day. Now, this is a result of an ongoing drought that's limited energy production. Now, most of the electricity comes from the Gori hydroelectric dam, but its reservoirs have reached historic lows due to the delay in the country's rainy season as a result of the El Nino weather system.
Yes, the government said that they'd continue to provide services to the Venezuelan people, but there will be restrictions and that this is necessary. He says it's a sacrifice. The drought is just adding, of course, more stress on the country as they struggle to provide basic needs, as their economy has suffered as a result of the decline in oil prices, as well as some political turmoil taking place as well, which is putting a strain on the economy.
Well, identity has been a hot topic lately in Washington and all over the nation concerning gender. Now, one reporter went to a popular college to put some of the brightest minds of the college students here to get their take on this gender identity. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
There's been a lot of talk about identity lately, but how far does it go? And is it possible to be wrong? We went to the University of Washington to find out.
Are you aware of the debate happening in Washington State around the ability to access bathrooms, locker rooms, spas based on gender identity and gender expression?
I think people should be able to have access to the facility.
I think bathrooms could and potentially should be gender neutral because there doesn't need to be a classification for differences.
I think people definitely should have the ability to go into whichever locker room they want.
I feel like at least public universities should do their best to accommodate for those who do not have a specific gender identity.
You know, whether you identify as male or female and whether your sex at birth is matching to that, you should be able to utilize the resources.
So if I told you that I was a woman, what would your response be?
Good for you. Okay. Like, yeah.
Nice to meet you.
I'd be like, what? Really?
I don't have a problem with it.
I'd ask you how you came to that conclusion.
If I told you that I was Chinese, what would your response be?
I mean, I might be a little surprised, but I would say, good for you. Like, yeah, be who you are.
I would maybe think you had some Chinese ancestor.
I would ask you how you similarly came to that conclusion and why you came to that conclusion.
I would have a lot of questions just because on the outside I would assume that you're a white man.
If I told you that I was 7 years old, what would your response be?
I wouldn't believe that immediately.
If you feel 7 at heart, then then so be it. Yeah, good for you.
So if I wanted to enroll in a first grade class, do you think I should be allowed to?
Probably not, I guess. I mean, unless you haven't completed first grade up to this point and for some reason need to do that now.
If that's where you feel like mentally you should be, then I feel like there are communities that would accept you for that.
I would say so long as you're not hindering society and you're not causing harm to other people, I feel like that should be an okay thing.
If I told you I'm 6 feet 5 inches, what would you say?
That I would question.
Why?
Because you're not. No, I don't think you're 6'5".
If you truly believed you're 6'5", I don't think it's harmful. I think it's fine if you believe that. It doesn't matter to me if you think you're taller than you are.
So you'd be willing to tell me I'm wrong?
I wouldn't tell you you're wrong.
No, but I say that I don't think that you are.
I feel like that's not my place as like another human to say someone is wrong or to draw lines or boundaries.
No, I mean, I wouldn't just go like, oh, you're wrong, like that's wrong to believe in it. Because I mean, again, it doesn't really bother me what you want to think about your height or anything.
So I can be a Chinese woman.
You sure.
But I can't be a 6'5" Chinese woman.
Yes.
It shouldn't be hard to tell a 5'9" white guy that he's not a 6'5" Chinese woman. But clearly it is. Why? What does that say about our culture? And what does that say about our ability to answer the questions that actually are difficult?
Wow, seems like there's still a lot of confusion and people on different sides of the fence regarding this issue. Well, next we go to Larry McGee, who has our story on parents and coaches gone wild, as well as several other interesting stories, including a rather surprising fact concerning the rabbis and some of their approved practices. Larry, how does it all start off for us?
With more blows and punches, and this time it's the coaches at a Little League game in Florida who are making headlines after thoughtless words led to a brawl that was captured on video. Reports of such incidents have been increasing throughout the country, and experts say it is the children who are most hurt by the bad example. Even more violence in the schools, only this time fatal, after a 16-year-old student was killed this week in a restroom brawl. The tragedy took place at a high school in Delaware where the young girl was jumped by at least 2 other female students. The details are unclear as to who alerted authorities, but paramedics arrived to find the young victim critically injured and reportedly tried desperately to save her, performing CPR and airlifting her to a local hospital. The medics' efforts were unsuccessful, however, and the teenager later died. Wilmington Mayor Dennis Williams shed tears and expressed being upset and heartbroken at the young lady's death. Later reports revealed that the altercation was allegedly over a boy. Also revealed this week was the questionable plan by Mexico's president to fight drugs in his country. The Mexican head officially announced his intention to legalize marijuana in his nation for medicinal use, opening the door for pharmaceutical companies to begin producing and distributing drugs derived from marijuana and its active ingredients. The initiative also allows for possession of up to 28 grams of cannabis for personal use. According to international standards, President Nieto stated, consumption of marijuana in Mexico has been decriminalized. Meanwhile, the cartels, largely recognized as controlling black market distribution, are warring in competition, with more than 150,000 people reportedly killed over the past 10 years. President Nieto conveyed that Mexico has suffered negative effects of organized crime related to the drug trade, but a new world consensus is gradually emerging in favor of reforming the international regime regarding drugs. As a striking example of that consensus, reports this week of a startling item on the list of allowable products for European Jews. The shocker came as Jews were preparing for their form of Passover, which involves efforts to abstain from consuming products with yeast in it. To aid those efforts, Ashkenazi Jews utilize a list entitled Kitnioit, which lists items which may be consumed by Ashkenazi Jews during any other time of the year, but must be avoided during the Passover holiday. This year, some rabbis included hemp on their list of kitnioid, the family of which includes the cannabis or marijuana plant, and that has quite a few people talking. Before we return back with Katan and Jeff, have a look at this footage that has the whole world wondering about the true nature of the religion of the rabbis.
הריח הזה הוא מרפא, משקר. זה ריח מרפא. דוס פדיקריינקה, דוס אינצויס.
אמרת ברור את ממויצי.
עבדה, ברוך הדו אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא מיני צומים.
Amen. Looked like the rabbi was getting ready to bless it there and I guess give his approval on the hemp being kosher for Passover.
Very interesting.
Well, have you ever considered spitting tobacco to be much safer than smoking? Well, this next video proves there can be severe consequences from chewing. Let's listen to one man's story.
Sure enough, when I went back to see him, I was diagnosed with cancer, an undifferentiated squamous cell carcinoma, because of my use of this stuff right here, spit tobacco. I went through 12 and a half hours of surgery, 9 days before my 27th birthday. They ended up cutting through my jaw, they had to take out a third of my tongue, and they had to go down into my neck and remove muscle tissues and lymph glands out of the right side of my neck. And in the process of doing that, they destroyed nerves. I can't raise my arm any higher than that now because of the nerve damage. I lost partial use of my right arm.
Spit tobacco, also called chewing tobacco. In spit tobacco, there's no smoke or tar to inhale, so it must be safer than cigarettes, right?
Truth is, spit tobacco places 10 times more cancer-causing ingredients in the mouth and bloodstream than cigarettes.
And because spit tobacco stays in the mouth for hours at a time, nicotine and other poisons have more time to be absorbed. You may think that when you spit out the tobacco, the danger is over, but the harmful chemicals still linger.
Poisons like polonium-210, an element found in nuclear waste that gives off radiation.
Lead, a lethal nerve poison.
Arsenic, cyanide, and 25 other deadly ingredients.
Wow, very devastating, very devastating.
Sad that all that has to take place just because somebody wants to put something in their mouth.
Yeah, with all those toxins that are in there, it's any surprise that more people aren't suffering the same thing. Well, a meeting between Cold War adversaries, NATO and Russia, Council was the first of its kind in 2 years. The goal was simple: to ease the ever-increasing tension between the two parties.
But as soon as NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg finished meeting with the Russian delegation, it was clear that they were not in agreement. Now, the Secretary General said in a press conference afterwards, NATO allies remain firm that there can be no return to practical cooperation until Russia returns to the respect of international law.
Stoltenberg was referring to his and the Western view that Russia took Crimea illegally and now supports an armed insurgency in eastern Ukraine. Just last month, the 2-year anniversary of Russia's annexation was being celebrated with parades by pro-Russian parties in the streets of Crimea.
Well, also, over the last 2 years, NATO has increased military drills near Russia's border and has cut off full relations with Moscow. Now, one Russian ambassador who took part in the meeting spoke to reporters afterwards, saying, "Our position was very clear from the beginning. We were ready to talk."
He went on to say, this was the decision of NATO to stop all projects of cooperation that were very successful and were very important for security of NATO-Russian Council. But we are open for the dialogue and our position has not changed.
Well, also in Syria, where a ceasefire deal is in place between the Syrian army and militants, the situation is not improving. Instead, more cries for war coming from the Syrians' opposition chief negotiator. Mohammed al-Nuitz, the senior negotiator of the Saudi-backed High Negotiations Committee, or HNC, published these remarks on his Twitter page.
He wrote, "Don't trust the regime and don't wait for their pity. Strike them at their necks," in other words, kill them. Strike them everywhere. A few members of the opposition group, however, said that al-Nuit's position was personal and not that of the HNC.
Hard to be a negotiator if you're going to use words like that.
Yeah, fighting words, that's for sure.
Well, Syria has vowed to take back the Golan Heights from Israel by any means necessary. Deputy Foreign Minister Faisal Mekdad made the remarks after Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the world the time has come for the international community to finally recognize that the Golan Heights will remain under Israel's sovereignty permanently.
The Syrian foreign minister said Damascus is even prepared to use military force to return the Golan Heights back to Syria. He also accused Israel of being behind terror attacks in Syria and called the Israeli cabinet meeting a political attack. Now, the Syrian official further called the Arab countries to help take back the occupied territories from Israel. So it sounds like both sides are headstrong in regards to this issue on the Golan Heights.
A recently released Danish documentary claims a number of private British defense companies may have recruited former child soldiers from Africa to work in American bases in Iraq. Now, no British company has commented on the claim so far, although UK media outlets have been quoting a former director of the company mentioned in the film.
The worldwide scandal that broke last year with German carmaker Volkswagen has come to an end. A deal was reached with U.S. authorities to compensate owners of about 500,000 cars that cheated diesel emissions tests. A U.S. judge said the settlement will give consumers the choice between having the company buy back the cars or repair them.
Well, it is still unknown how much each owner would get, but the ruling judge said that the proposed compensation was substantial. Now, Bloomberg reported the settlement would cost the German car maker close to 9 billion euros. Now, the agreement includes setting up a special fund to make up for the excess pollution caused by the rig engines and to promote greener technology.
That's got to really hurt the company in that regards. Well, the worldwide Volkswagen scandal began when U.S. regulators found VW had sold cars with rigged emission software that enabled them to pollute up to 40 times the legal limit.
Well, leaders from over 170 countries at the UN headquarters are expected to sign the Paris climate deal to tackle the issue of global warming. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said, "I urge all countries to move quickly to join the agreement at the national level so that the Paris Agreement can enter into force as early as possible."
That's right. The UN chief continued, "We must intensify efforts to decarbonize our economies. Climate action is not a burden. Indeed, it offers many benefits. It can help us eradicate poverty, create green jobs, defeat hunger, and prevent instability."
The agreement, scheduled to begin in 2020, will come into force as soon as it is signed by 55 countries responsible for 55% of global emissions. Now, the Paris Agreement reached in December was a major breakthrough in the UN climate negotiations and was considered as the first step towards binding countries to cut these greenhouse gas emissions.
Well, it seems like with everything that we've seen so far in the news, from the droughts to the parents fighting on the fields, to the earthquakes, to this latest thing with the climate summit, everyone's still kind of scratching their head for answers, but they're really not coming up with any viable solutions that would bring the change that they're desiring to see.
Well, stay tuned, because Yeshua Hawkins does have the answers and has been preaching them for all these years now. Now, don't forget, you can contact the House of Yahweh and request their Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter, and you can read for yourself about these answers to the problems that you're seeing in today.
That's right. To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas, 79604. You can also call them at 1-800-613-9494 or visit any of their websites at www.yahweh.com, www.yisroelhawkins.com, www.yahwehsbranch.com, or visit our website at www.ypnnews.com. You can also email them at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please call the number on your screen. And don't forget the latest and greatest Bible study tool on the market, the Yisroel Says program. You can find that at www.yisroelsays.com, which now also includes the Book of Yahweh as well.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another enlightening message from Yeshua Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.